Okay, that was really close. Tell you what, we'll try to do both of these at some point since y'all really seem to want both of them. I'd be down for that. But for now, the one with attitude. Bad Religion, a foundation of the California punk sound. They formed in the 80s, toured through the 90s, and even after 41 years still remain one of the greatest names in punk. Other bands wish they could have this kind of track record. Especially this year, Jesus Christ. With their lightning-fast riffs, vicious beats, and intelligent lyrics, maybe at times a little too intelligent, they are bar none one of the best long-haul American punk groups in the game, and they've more than proven their worth across all 4 of those decades. But like a lot of other acts that have been around for over 40 years, that also means I get how that can be a little overwhelming. But hey, that's why this show exists, and I'll be happy to show you how to get into Bad Religion. But I gotta put a big asterisk at the very beginning of this video. See, usually when I do these how to get intos, I like to map out the differences in sound between a band's catalog and kind of chart their growth as they progress sonically and whatnot. You know, they started sounding like this, then they changed and sounded like this. Gordon Road appears, make a gay joke, Lil Sweetie cameo, roll credits. Y'all get the idea. But, when it comes to Bad Religion, okay, look, I am not exaggerating when I say that this is one of my favorite bands of all time. I have 2 Bad Religion tattoos on me. You don't do that unless you're committed, people. I adore this fucking band. But Bad Religion, they totally have the problem. They do! They have it! It's harsh truth, people. This is a thing I've addressed in the past, but a quick refresher in case you're new here. The problem is a phenomenon where a band has a very distinctive kind of sound. Could perhaps say too distinctive. It's when a band has one particular trick or one particular sound or style that they just happen to do really, really well. They kind of don't do much else outside of that, really? I mean, some bands are known and celebrated for how eclectic they are. They'll change things up on every album. A band with a problem? Yeah, not so much. But hey, if a band with the problem is really good at their one particular trick, well, that ain't really a problem at all, is it? In fact, more often than not, bands who exhibit the problem often tend to have their biggest real problems when they try to deviate from the formula they've created. More on that later. Even as much as I love this band, I just can't even deny it myself. Bad Religion totally has the problem. I've had a lot of people ask me for this video for a very long time now, and often what I'll hear from those people is, "Crash, I've tried, I just can't get into this band. It all sounds the same, dude." And, well, if this particular sound or style just doesn't seem to gel with you, I hate to admit it, but this honestly may not be the band for you. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. It's not that there aren't lots of little nuances and growth that they did make over their career. Believe me, we will get into some of that. But, I don't know, the band's overall general sound is kinda samey. And unless you happen to have a particularly well-trained ear, or you're just a turbo nerd for these guys like I am, I honestly wouldn't blame you for not being able to spot a lot of the differences. It's okay if this particular sound is not your thing. But if you're still with me, let's go ahead and get started. So honestly, it's going to help make things a bit easier to follow if I break the band's entire discography into eras. Bad Religion is a band that went through many different forms, and each form has its own distinctive history and general sound. I'll go into more detail as we go, but for now, here's our basic chart. We start with their first 2 records. I'm gonna call this the proto-era. Then from Suffer to Generator, we have the Big 4 era. Kinda self-explanatory there. Then from Recipe to Hate to the New America, we have what's called the Atlantic era, which is basically just everything they recorded while they were signed to Atlantic Records. And finally, we have what I'm gonna call the Return era, from Process of Belief to True North. Age of Unreason, it doesn't fit comfortably into any of these eras. We'll get to it. By the way, get used to me saying we'll get to it a lot in this video because, just trust me, we'll get to it. I feel like this is probably going to be the best way to chart a lot of their major checkpoints along their career. And man oh man, do we need to start right here in the Big 4 era, because man, the first 3 records from this period. The masses of humanity have always had to suffer. We got no control. We do not understand. You have no control. Lie, lie, lie. Lie, lie, lie. Lie, lie, lie. My God. A lot of folks basically consider the records from the Big 4 era the band's first true albums. While Bad Religion did exist long before Suffer, their first records and EPs weren't really the Bad Religion we'd come to know and love today. Again, we'll get to it. But these albums here were the first ones they put out where the band really sounded like themselves, especially with Suffer in 1988. The road to this record was a very tumultuous one. The band had broken up again after their Back to the Known EP, where they washed the taste of the last record out of everyone's mouths, and guitarist and co-founding member Brett Gurewitz, after dealing with some substance abuse problems, was working as a studio engineer and had been trying to revive his old Epitaph label that he'd originally established to release all of Bad Religion's first few albums. And yes, people, when I say Epitaph, I mean that Epitaph. Epitaph Records, which today is literally one of the biggest independent record publishers in the entire world, was started in Brett Gurewitz's bedroom to release his own band's records. One thing led to another, and the guys decided to pull a Jake and Elwood, and they went about putting the band back together. And they were also able to convince original bassist Jay Bentley and original drummer Pete Finestone to rejoin the group, most likely after promising they were gonna lay off the yes shit, and finally reformed Bad Religion once again, now also including new guitarist Greg Hetson from the Circle Jerks. Bad Religion was now a 5-piece, and after 8 weeks of writing and recording, the band released their first new record in 3 years, and it fucking changed everything, people. Granted, these changes didn't necessarily happen overnight. Suffer wasn't a commercial success at first. Its initial run only sold around 4,000 copies, but the people who did buy it were floored by it, and word of mouth spread like wildfire on this record. While Back to the Known saw the band returning to their roots after the dark times, Suffer was the album that basically made Bad Religion Bad Religion. This was the first album where they truly realized their sound and finally figured out the formula. Loud as hell, lightning fast, and at 25 minutes, it's the absolute perfect little punk rock snack. Delirium of disorder, you are the government, do what you want, best for you, forbidden beat, just people. And this is where a lot of their trademark staples would first be introduced. This was the first album to feature those signature vocal harmonies, provided mainly by Jay and Brett, or as the band likes to refer to them, those oohs and ahs? Oh, I'm sorry, but that's gross. Why would you call them that? When Bad Religion talks about their oohs and ahs, they become punk rock legends. When I talk about mine, I get demonetized and my doctor makes me use the cream. This was also the album where the band's lyrical style took a much more, educated approach. Granted, Bad Religion has always dealt with serious topics in their lyrics, stuff like war, religion, environmentalism, etc. But on their first record, it was very primitive. On this one, though, phantasmal myriads of sane bucolic birth. What the fuck even is this phrasing? Oh my god. I love how, like, even the Genius description is like, okay, in English this means. A lot of people point to this record as a turning point for punk music, and it's been a major inspiration to bands both old and new. Not only a great record for this band, but a great record in general. A must-hear for anyone with any interest in the punk genre, just in general. This, again, was the album where Bad Religion truly became Bad Religion. And their follow-up, No Control? I'd argue it's even better. For No Control, they basically took everything that worked with Suffer and just went even further with it. Faster, louder, even more esoteric. Greg, look, we love you. We know you're a very smart boy, but please put the thesaurus down. You're hurting the people you love. This album turned the dial up, and that motherfucking dial was already way past 11. This one is more explosive and bombastic, particularly in its production. It just has a bit more of a noisier edge to it. Fun fact, it's kind of intentional on this one. Or, to put it another way, it was more like a happy accident. While Brett was producing, he originally put all the tracks through an Aphex Systems compiler, but absolutely hated how the compression sounded with their material, so he spent a crazy long amount of time trying to remove all the compression and extra fiddling that the compiler had done. But the actual horrifying process of removing all that compression was what basically helped him discover the kind of mixing that worked best for the band. That particular sound, that particular edge, has been a staple for pretty much the rest of their entire career. No doubt, this is another big personal favorite from me. Those pounding drums on Big Bang, those gorgeous harmonies on the title track, those stinging lyrics on I Wanna Conquer the World.
Hey brother Christian with your high and mighty air, your actions speak so loud I can't hear a word you're saying.
Look, whether you're a believer or not, tell me that line doesn't hit. That really weird moment in I Want Something More where the song just kind of decides to stop for no reason. Less. God damn it! So many standout tracks, so many bangers. Suffer may have gotten the fire started, but in my opinion, the album that really got the fire burning was this one. Another absolute must-hear. And same goes for the third record of the Big Four, Against the Grain. 3 in a row, people. I mean, again, another big personal favorite of mine. I mean, I'm a Hoosier. You know I can appreciate some damn corn. It's the only fucking thing that exists in this state.
There is more than corn in Indiana.
You're full of shit! Against the Grain just kept pummeling forward with that sound the guys had built on the first two records. More ferocious, more powerful, and they even made the teensiest little nudge towards some experimentation. In Bad Religion, a majority of the tracks are written by what's considered to be the two big pillars of the band, lead singer Greg Graffin and lead guitarist, producer, record executive, freaking everything, Brett Gurewitz. They're the Romero and Carmack of this band, and with things starting to shake up in later years, you'll see just how important the chemistry is between the two of them. But on this record, they actually opened the doors a little bit and let Bentley and Hetson pen a few tracks. And they're both really good, too. Unacceptable and the positive aspect of negative thinking are fun, rowdy, and thought-provoking tracks that show that it isn't just Greg and Brett who are a little eager with the synonyms there. God damn. And again, this album is nearly flawless from back to front. So many good songs on this one, with so many good messages too. Modern Man, Turn on the Light, Faith Alone, Walk Away, 21st Century Digital Boy, the amazing title track. Hell, there's even a track on here called Flat Earth Society, and this song was written in 1990. How the fuck are we still having this problem? Another lean, tight, and explosive piece of punk music that helped shape what the genre would become in the 90s. I mean, most of the Big Four run actually takes place in the late 80s, but honestly, these albums were so far ahead of their time that they helped shape the face of what punk would morph into in later years. And they are just gorgeous, wonderful pieces of music that honestly don't have a skippable track across all three of them. When they finally did hit their stride in '88, it just became a whole other ball game.
But Crash, you keep calling it the Big Four era. The Generator isn't in the must-hears. Where's Generator? You're gonna talk about Generator, right? Where's Generator? You have to talk about Generator.
Wow, you're pushy. Sing along with me, kids. We'll get to it. If there are any records I just insist you hear from these guys, it's gotta be these three. It won't even take you an hour and a half to get through all three of them, and it's literally some of the most gorgeously constructed, brilliantly poetic, savagely intelligent, and just downright rocking punk music ever made. And the good news is, we're barely even scratching the surface here, because this band, not only were they great back then, but they've been great for 41 fucking years. And the next big rec I can give you happens to be one of their most well-known records too, Stranger Than Fiction. Yeah, how could I not recommend this one to you? Outside of the Big Four, this is likely one of their most notable releases. Even if you've never heard of this band, chances are you've at least heard something off of this record. And you know what? That's for a damn good reason too, because not only is it one of their best records, it's one of the best records that 1994 would ever produce, and people, I do not say that lightly. This was also, strangely enough, their first major release with a major label. Yes, I know, Recipe for Hate got a re-release, don't be a pedant, nobody cares but you. But yeah, it's honestly weird to think about now, given how completely intertwined this band's legacy is with Epitaph Records. Yeah, there was actually a fairly long period of their career where Bad Religion, the Epitaph band, wasn't with Epitaph at all. What makes it even weirder is that specifically for this record and some of Recipe for Hate, we'll get to it, Brett Gurewitz, Mr. Epitaph himself, was doing all of that while he was building Epitaph at the same time. He was signed with Atlantic with Bad Religion, but still ran Epitaph during that time. Like, God, when did he sleep? This record was the first made with a major label behind it, and it signifies a major change in sound and scope. This was Bad Religion at their most polished and their most professional up to that point. The big studio money was rolling in, and believe me, it shows on this one. I mean, just listen to one of their old songs, 21st Century Digital Boy, for example. 'Cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. Right next to one of their new songs, 21st Century Digital Boy. 'Cause I'm a 21st century digital boy. Yeah, they re-recorded this song for this record, and hot take? I actually like the new cut better. It's much more polished, Greg's vocal work is much better, it actually has an ending instead of just that weird random fade out. It's pretty rare to find just the perfect example of band growth, and this example is so clear-cut you could put it in a textbook, people. I mean, God. They even brought in a lot more features on this record, something that they played with on the last one, and it led to some decent success, so they tried it again. Again, we'll get to it. Tim Armstrong of Rancid gets an entire verse on television, Jim Lindberg from Pennywise guests on Marked, and no less than Wayne Kramer of MC5 is playing the solo for the opening track, Incomplete. Not to mention that this would also show them nudging towards a slightly more radio-friendly, alt-rock kind of sound. Again, not too much. I mean... Still Bad Religion at the end of the day. But shock and horror, there is a song on this album that goes over 4 minutes. 4 minutes for a punk rock song? That's bullshit. You spend more than 3 minutes on any punk song, you're basically jerking off. Who are you, Emerson, Lake and Palmer with your 4-minute song? What could this 4-minute piece of crap possibly... Oh, it's Infected? You and me have a disease. One of the most celebrated and recognized songs out of their entire catalog. Oh shit. This album, while not the official beginning of the Atlantic era, was the one that made them household names, and it absolutely slays. It's another one of many great records that doesn't really have a single skippable track in my opinion. Hell, even its B-sides are really good. Leaders and Followers is legit one of my favorite songs of theirs. And chances are, especially back in the day, you probably wouldn't have even known this song existed. Maybe if you were a Clerks mega fan. On this record, the boys proved that they were good enough to win the mainstream over. Something that is difficult for any punk band to achieve. But they did it, and this album remains a certified classic. Sadly though, it would prove to be kind of the end of an era for these guys. I consider this to be the last record of their classic stage. After this record, mounting responsibilities at Brett's other big gig, and tensions between him and Greg would result in him leaving Bad Religion. Which again is so weird to think about. Bad Religion was Brett's band, the catalyst that helped make his entire label grow, and for a long time, he wasn't part of it. Brett continued with his duties at Epitaph while his baby just went on without him for a little while. And while they did produce some damn fine music without his presence, they would never reach that same level of greatness again. Not in this era, at least. This is the only Atlantic era record I'm putting in this tier, and man, you'll notice why when we get to it. And even though making this record was a difficult process that splintered the band for a very long time, I can't argue that Brett certainly left on a high note, which made it all the more sweeter when he finally came back. Oh baby, the process of belief. Folks, this right here, this is my favorite Bad Religion album, without a doubt. And believe me, even saying that is difficult because this band just has so many great records, but this is definitely the one that hits home for me the hardest. The band's time with Atlantic was tumultuous, to say the least, and their previous record before this one had been one of their poorest selling since the super early days. While they had sold just enough copies of it for Atlantic to let them stay on, the band were so miserable working with them at this point that they purposefully just said, you know what, do us a favor and fire us. We hate it here, just let us go. Which they promptly did. After that record, again, we'll get to it, many folks thought that was gonna be the end. Even several members of the band thought that was gonna be it. But Greg and Brett were able to patch up some of their differences and rekindle their friendship. And as a result, the band would sign back on to Epitaph. And finally, after 7 very long years, Brett Gurewitz was back in the band that made his music stardom dreams come true. And then more bad shit happened. Drummer Bobby Shayer, who had been around since Generator, suffered a crippling rotator cuff injury that would sadly end up costing him his ability to drum. Bobby had really proven himself on records like Stranger Than Fiction and Grey Race. He left fairly big shoes to fill, but boy oh boy, did they fill those motherfucking shoes. Brooks Wackerman. Oh, y'all, Brooks freaking Wackerman. I was almost tempted to call the Return era the Brooks era because, oh my god, his drumming is pretty much just hot take, but he's easily the best drummer this band has ever had, just bar none. His rapid fire machine gun greased lightning approach to percussion was a vital factor in helping them transform back into a raging, stampeding punk rock menace, and he absolutely destroys it on this album's first 3 tracks, Supersonic, Prove It, and Can't Stop It. During their time with Atlantic, they did a lot of experimentation and expanding their sound, and playing around with other genres and styles, but by the end, things were starting to get really flabby and listless. It was too poppy, too slow, too blah. And then this album came out and it was just a triple espresso at 5 o'clock in the morning. It wakes you right the fuck up. The difference between this record and New America is night and day. I'd almost challenge you to listen to them back to back just so you can feel how much of a change it is. Like, it doesn't even sound like the same band, you know? It's crazy. It was a frankly stunning leap forward for them. Not only because it was a return to form, but because they were able to maintain some of the better talents and lessons they'd learned from playing around with other genres. This wasn't just Suffer Part 5, there were bits of reggae sprinkled in Sorrow, traces of heavier rock in stuff like Broken and Epiphany, little tiny bits of country in stuff like Evangeline, and whatever the hell's happening in Bored and Extremely Dangerous. Is this a Pink Floyd song? Yeah! In my opinion, this record is their absolute peak. While they would have other highlights, make no doubt this one is the perfect melding point of the old and the new. The raw punk rock roots of their beginning, and the more mature, experimental stuff they would acquire in later years. Greg and Brett's songwriting has never been better. Every member of the band is playing their hearts out, and this is also the first Bad Religion record where Bad Religion became a 3-guitar assault. With Brett back in the fold, Greg Heston still resilient as ever, and even new guitarist Brian Baker, Greg's original replacement, still on board as well for this album. Can I just say how cool of a move that was, letting Brian stay on? Like, not only did it really help flesh out their sound, but like, that was just like a good move. Come on, Brian's a dude. We like Brian. Let's let Brian stay. Brian's cool. This one, is an absolute triumph. Maybe not their most celebrated or popular record, but to me, it showcases the band in their best form, playing some of the best music they would ever write. If I could only pick one album from a catalog that's already bloated with some outright classics, this one, near perfection. And then True North is also here, and True North is also really good too. I mean, don't get it twisted, I do really love this record, but can I be real? It was kind of a tough call as to whether I should put this on, like, here or Next Steps. It's not a lot of people's go-to record necessarily. For one, this was their 16th album. It's a very late release for them. And, you know, any other band, they would just be on autopilot at this point. But Bad Religion? Nah, man, they didn't phone anything in. True North is just a great testament to this band's work ethic. They just don't half-ass anything. This one was yet another return to form. Seriously, how many times has Bad Religion returned to form in some way? Is that like a record? Is that something Guinness can take down? Because I'm pretty sure these guys have it. Supposedly, and this is just hearsay between old punk farts, so take this with a grain of salt, but supposedly, Brett had heard the latest Pennywise album at the time and was so floored by it that he, quote, decided to write a sequel to No Control. No small feat there, but credit where it's due, I'd say the guys got pretty close. Again, the name of the game is speed. These guys always seem to be at their best when their foot is just slammed on the accelerator. And this album rarely lets up. That explosive opening track, the gloriously rebellious Fuck You, the chaotic In Their Hearts Is Right, the purely caffeinated My Head Is Full of Ghosts, and that beautiful opening. Hell, they even let Brett take lead vocals on Dharma and the Bomb, and I literally have no idea why they did that, but it's a neat little change of pace. It's a cool song. I dig it. It's one of those records that has absolutely no right to be as good as it is. Again, this is their 16th record. They were in their 33rd year as a band. They didn't have anything left to prove. They didn't have anybody left to impress. They still turned in a goddamn slammer of a record. Hell, it's another one of the best records of their entire career. Overall, they are just one of the most consistently effective punk bands that have ever existed. In every era of their existence, they seem to be able to bust out at least one, if not several, outright classic records. And this particular era is sandwiched together between two absolutely stellar releases. Like, this album starts at a peak and ends at a peak. And True North, I don't know, even if it's not like Suffer or No Control or Process of Belief good necessarily, I'd still argue it is a damn fine record. And if you want a good example of a band just excelling in their later years, this is a great one to pick up. This record right here proves that punk has no age limit. And it proves that getting old is no excuse. Cough, cough, Offspring. But hang on, we have officially gotten way too far ahead in the timeline. Let's go back. Way back. I mean, way back. People, let's go proto. For a lot of folks, Bad Religion started gaining prominence in the late 80s, but technically, these guys got started all the way back in 1980 proper. Their self-titled debut EP came out all the way back in 1981 when Greg and Brett were both 16 years old. Bad Religion may be more thought of these days as like a 90s punk staple, but honestly, they were touring the 80s scene with a lot of the West Coast giants at the time. They shared billing with some of the biggest acts to ever come out of punk. And while they weren't as particularly well known as those guys or anything, in fact, they were a bunch of kids from the Valley, so a lot of people actually thought of them as posers.
But if you were from the Valley, it was like, you know, oh, you're from the Valley.
But they still made a hell of an impression regardless, especially with their full-length debut, How Could Hell Be Any Worse? Made on a $3,000 loan from Brett Gerowitz's dad and recorded between what basically amounts to 2 weekends, the band was shocked to find out that by the time the year was out, the little record they put out for shits and giggles had sold over 1,000 copies. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but given that this record was banged out in 4 days by a bunch of literal teenagers with no promotion, no label help, no nothing, this was garage band at its most garage bandy level, it's really impressive when you take that into account. And man, when you listen to this record, you can see it. You can totally catch the sparks of brilliance that would eventually turn into a full-blown fire in later years. Greg and Brett's songwriting, while definitely on a more basic level, is still really solid, and the riffs and beats, while again very primitive, I still have that maniacal and ferociously chaotic energy to them. This record is just so interesting, especially after you've kind of gotten to know the band. It's so cool seeing these elements in their infancy, you know, but also hearing Bad Religion mixed in that super early 80s punk, gritty, DIY style. This is a classic punk rock record. In my opinion, it belongs right up there with like Group Sex, Bad Brain self-titled, or the early Black Flag stuff. And while it definitely feels...
Bad Religion!
What?
Yeah, answer me, Bad Religion.
undercooked in places, it's still so awesome to see that even in their embryonic stage, they were still this damn good. That's why I call this era the proto-era. Bad Religion did technically exist, but they weren't quite Bad Religion yet. They still had a lot of growing to do, a lot of development to undertake, a lot of mistakes to make. But even at this stage, they were still just so damn good that, yeah, especially as an admirer of old school hardcore, I gotta recommend you check this one out, especially if you love the gritty, early 80s birth of hardcore music. Hell, this record is more influential than you might think. Any Rage Against the Machine fans out there? Well, Zach De La Rocha cited this album as one of the records that got him into music, specifically stating that the track Fuck Armageddon This Is Hell changed his life. So, you know, you're welcome. While it's not a record without flaws, it's got plenty of flaws, trust me. The fact that they were so excellent from the very damn beginning just... man, it just goes to show you what a fucking gigantic force of talent these guys possessed. Then they almost pissed all of it away. While the core record is good, I'd honestly recommend you pick up the CD or the streaming version of this record. It includes a lot of the extra stuff like the early EPs, a lot of the demos, a lot of the tertiary releases. Believe me, in the earliest days of this band, like a lot of punk bands, honestly, keeping track of all this stuff gets needlessly complicated. By far not their best, but still a damn interesting era, especially if you love the classics. That was their very first outing, and Bad Religion would go on to have many, many more classic records. Classics on top of classics, people. Even a lot of the albums they release immediately after their classic records would still turn out to be like really goddamn good follow-ups. This is something I'm gonna just call, because I'm uncreative, follow-up syndrome. I mean, you ever have an artist release an all-time classic fucking record, a 10 out of 10, but then the follow-up comes out and it's like, okay, I guess. RIP my comments section, but most of the time, Bad Religion, they don't have that problem. Their follow-ups to their best records often come pretty damn close to those albums. Case in point, The Gray Race. And the thing is, too, if any Bad Religion record was going to be disappointing, it was likely going to be this one. This was their first full record to not feature Brett Gurewitz. And believe me, stakes were riding high on this one. Their deal with Atlantic was still fresh, and now one of their key members was absent. And with Brett gone, they were down a guitarist as well as a singer and songwriter. Brett left some very, very big shoes to fill. But to their credit, they got somebody big to fill those shoes. As I mentioned earlier, they chose Brian Baker to be the one to take Greg's place. And if that name happens to sound familiar, it should. Baker was originally the guitarist of Minor Threats, and he'd been doing his thing with Dag Nasty for a while at this time. After they broke up again in '92, Baker was chosen originally just to replace Brett for the tour, but they liked him so much that he was chosen to be his permanent replacement. No doubt, Brian's guitar work really helps make the Gray Race distinctive. With both Baker and Hetson at the helm, ooh, we are just in full shred mode, people, and it absolutely fucking rules. Gray Race is another one of those albums that's just littered with fan favorites. A Walk, punk rock songs, Cease, Spirit Shine, 10 in 2010, Them and Us, which, you know, I can talk about like maturity and growth and sonic development and blah, 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 but let's be real. The thing that's gonna sell y'all on the validity of this record, it's the Crazy Taxi record. Not exclusively, yeah, Hear It and Inner Logic are also in that game. Get out of my ass. But yeah, during this time, Bad Religion, like a lot of punk bands in the 2000s, played around with licensing their music to video games. I mean, real talk, the thing that actually got me into this band hardcore in the first place was hearing their music in games like Crazy Taxi and Tony Hawk and Guitar Hero. Hands up, how many of y'all were the exact same way? How many? How many of y'all are music snobs today specifically because of games in the 2000s? I still own my Dreamcast, and I will fuck your ass up in Soul Calibur, motherfucker! While I wouldn't say this record is as good as Stranger Than Fiction, god damn does it hold its own. It's catchy, the guitar work is simply on fire from back to front, and even if the band was missing one of their most vital members, with this record, the band still looked like they were in damn capable hands. At least for a while, anyway. We'll get to it. Another record that maybe isn't as celebrated as some of their others, but one you shouldn't overlook. Another flat-out outstanding record that I don't think will disappoint you if you want to just check it out of raw curiosity. Just, Where are my Crazy Taxi fans at? Anyway, the follow-up syndrome would continue to hit with these guys on the follow-up to yet another classic record, The Empire Strikes First. Again, the Return era is easily my favorite era of Bad Religion. The band is a 3-guitar assault, they're firing on all cylinders, and by God are they energized and passionate, particularly on the first 2 releases. This record continues that frantic energy and crazy spirit that they built on Process of Belief, perhaps even a little bit farther. Like, this record is just kinda all over the map, folks. There's synth work, orchestral arrangements, organs, fiddles, something called a sonic alienator. Hell, on Let Them Eat War, they even bring in Sage Francis to do a rap verse. I mean, how cool is that? In fact, there's a lot of notable features on this record too, like, a lot. Noted violinist David Bragger shows up on Atheist Peace. Mike Campbell from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers shows up on Los Angeles is Burning. And even Atticus Ross assisted with a lot of the programming duties on this record. Yes, that Atticus Ross. They really just went all out for this one, and my God does it show. This may be also one of the most passionate albums they've released lyrically. See, this record came out around 2004, and what was going on in America in 2004?
You're just a lying little bitch who ruins things and wants the world to burn.
This idiot. This fucking clown and his stupid fucking war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Like, originally I was gonna talk about how one of the downfalls of this album is how it feels kind of dated today, but fucking whoops! To put it more professionally, they were none too happy about the war either. Bad Religion has always been a very political band. I mean, with a name and logo like this, you pretty much have to be. But on this one, they directed a great deal of their ire at one source specifically, and it was the absolute cretins marching us into a war we didn't want. I mean, hell, that was the mood with a lot of early 2000s punk bands. A lot of bands spoke up about Bush and the war and everything that was going on at the time, and this was Bad Religion's big contribution to that wave. With some of their most fiery anthems to date, no less. Let Them Eat War, God's Love, To Another Abyss, the title track. Basically, the entire second half of this album is just a giant middle finger to the people running the war in the Middle East, and it makes for some of the best music in their catalog, honestly, even if it does hit a little different today. Like, yeah, in 2021, a line like that hits so different, but still, it's another fantastic follow-up record, and it makes the 1-2 punch of this and Process of Belief a wonderful listening experience. Bleak listening experience, maybe, but still a fantastic one. And you know what? Just because I'm feeling sassy, fuck it. We're gonna throw the rest of the Return era in this section too, because goddammit, I love this era. It's just so good, people. Descent of Man and New Maps of Hell, just still great fucking records, people. These two in particular really hold an interesting distinction as well, being some of the few records not produced by Greg Graffin or Brett Gurewitz. Not that the band never worked with outside producers before. Hell, particularly during the Atlantic era, they worked with a lot of people, including guys like Andy Wallace and Rick Ocasek, as well as others. Don't worry, we'll get to it. But on the majority of their records, especially the stuff they did under Epitaph, usually the band would just self-produce their records. For these albums, though, they decided to bring in Joe Barresi. Not an immediately recognizable name, probably, but he's done some good work, and in particular, he'd done some notable work for guys like the Melvins and Queens of the Stone Age when they signed him on. He does do a pretty good job on these albums, I won't lie. I'm kinda lumping them together because goddamn video's too long enough as it is. But these records in particular, while I would honestly say they're a bit of a step down from both Process of Belief and Empire, they are still really damn solid on their own. The guitars are thick, heavy, and very well layered. Brooks' drumming is fantastic and frenetic as ever. And those vocal harmonies, those oohs and ahs. God, they are just oozy as ever. Particularly on New Maps of Hell, I'd say that's that album's particular strength. Like, man, the vocal harmonies on that are just a different class, you know? From Heroes and Martyrs to New Dark Ages to Dearly Beloved and Prodigal Son and Fields of Mars. Oh, dude, Fields of Mars is a great little track because this track almost sounds like an Into the Unknown track done right. Is that a hot take? I don't know. New Maps of Hell is another fantastic 38 minutes of music, and Descent of Man is also another good 43 minutes as well. Weirdly enough, this record may be their most folk and country influenced record. Again, don't get it twisted.
Do you remember when?
It's still a Bad Religion record, but the country influence is very noticeable here. You do see it in songs like Won't Somebody, Pride in the Pallor, Turn Your Back on Me, and I Won't Say Anything. They have this nice kind of mid-tempo bounce to them. Again, for as much as I say, oh, Bad Religion has the problem, and Bad Religion is ultra samey, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, a record like this shows that when they do want to mix things up, and when they do want to slow things down, it's something that they can pull off when they want to do it. They've touched on so many genres, I don't know if there is one they wouldn't be able to handle. Okay, maybe prog rock, but this record just illustrates their versatility, their creativity, and the close to limitless talent these guys have always possessed. It's another wonderful little spin. Give it a shot if you can. Oh my god, I'm so tired. That is 11 albums we talked about. Where are we so far? Oh my god, we're not even up to deep digging yet. Ugh. Two-parter.